Now, if you're like us, you probably grew up playing board games, and then you kind of grew out of those games, and then now what do?
You got to play new board games, so here are new games to replace your childhood favorites. What's up, buddy? My name is Nick.
I'm Mike.
We are the Brothers Murph, and make sure to subscribe. Today, we are going to be talking about games that can replace some of your childhood favorite games. We're talking about the Monopolies,
Yes.
Sorry,
The
Connect
Clues.
4. All of these are ultimately good games and a big part of a lot of our childhoods. They're certainly a big part of our childhood.
Absolutely.
But a lot of people don't know that there is a whole world of board games out there. You can see a whole bunch of them behind us. And a lot of them are kind of similar to these childhood favorites, but they're just a lot better.
They give you more decisions to
Yeah.
make. Ultimately, I think a lot of times board games, you kind of grow out of them because you don't have many choices in the game. And these games, modern board games, whatever you want to call them, give you a ton of agency as the player. So we are going to talk about some of your childhood favorites and give you suggestions of, like, if you like that, try this.
Exactly. So let's go ahead and get to the granddaddy of them all, Monopoly.
You know it, baby.
Has to be
Had
starting
to.
with Monopoly because it's Monopoly. You know, this is kind of the Monopoly has probably outsold any other game on the planet. I feel like
Absolutely.
everyone growing up had a copy of Monopoly, whether it was one of the various themed Monopolies. We had National Parks Monopoly as a kid.
Absolutely.
That was the one that we had. And so Monopoly is ultimately, especially if you're playing it correctly, is not necessarily a bad game, but tends to be long, kind of has a bad reputation in certain aspects.
Mostly because people don't play by the actual rules of the
Yes.
game. We all have, like, learned versions
Yes.
of the rules of the game.
But there are a couple different games that are kind of Monopoly-ish that you should try instead. If nothing else, try Monopoly Deal. Monopoly Deal is a much
Yes.
smaller card game version of Monopoly.
It is everything Monopoly. You are trying to ultimately collect 3 complete sets of properties because they always come like those colored
Yep.
sets. And so it's only cards. It's like 15 minutes
Yeah.
long. And you get to, get the hotels. It has all the flavor of Monopoly, but it's a fun little card game of playing actions and stuff like that. So if nothing else, it's super cheap. It's at like Targets and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a great feeling of Monopoly, but it's really quick and gives you more of those choices.
Indeed. Now, if you want to go into something more strategic, a game that you might have heard of because it's kind of broken into the mainstream
Absolutely.
is Catan, or
Yep.
previously Settlers of Catan. Catan, you could argue, is probably popular because it does have some Monopoly-ish stuff. It's not about like getting properties and stuff, but in Catan, you are settling this new area and you are rolling dice, and those dice are going to dictate kind of what tiles and stuff activate to give you
Right.
resources.
Absolutely, and you can build, cities and settlements around those
Roads.
tiles to hope to get chances to get more and more resources to build roads and to play cards and things like that. Make trades, so it has that kind of feeling of Monopoly because you're wheeling and dealing. Like
Yeah.
I can trade sheep for this and stuff, and people can negotiate things in Monopoly as well. So it kind of
Indeed.
reminded us of that. Plus, you're rolling 2 dice on a turn. That feels very
You
Monopoly.
can be kind of mean. There's a robber that you can move around to kind of mess with people.
Yep.
So there's that kind of meanness that kind of can sometimes come in Monopoly. And it's a really great game. It's again probably the biggest hobby board game out there is Catan. You know, it's really
Yeah.
really big. It's all over. People really like it, and it's kind of got some Monopoly elements to it. But if you really like the bidding of Monopoly, and you are supposed
You
to
like
be
that auction
bidding, that
part.
auction part of Monopoly, check out a game called QE. QE is like bidding, but on absolute steroids because you can bid whatever you want.
There's absolutely no limit to the amount of money you can offer up because you are representing a country and you can simply print more money if you need it.
Yeah.
And so you are bidding and making auctions for specific commodities and industries and things that your country will hopefully have. You get to cross them off on your little board. The whole thing that's fun about it is there's no limits.
Nope.
However, the player who ultimately bid the most money throughout the game is knocked out of the game, and they
Yeah.
cannot win no matter how many points they have. So you don't want to be. You want to be kind of loose with your cash.
Yeah, but you can't be too frivolous.
You got to be careful.
Yeah,
A
you
little
gotta
bit,
be
just a little bit careful.
A little bit careful. You want to bid the most, but not. Well, you want to bid the second most, really, because then you probably
Basically.
have the most points.
Yeah.
QE is wild. It's crazy. It's super super fun. And you can bid $1 or $10 bajillion. Literally, you can do whatever you want, and it's super super fun. So those are some quick games that can replace Monopoly if you grew up playing Monopoly. But let's get into our second. Wait, what's that?
Oh, that's the camera that people who haven't subscribed get to watch us from.
That's a worse camera, Mike.
That's the worst camera.
That's a worse camera.
weird.
It's got a weird angle.
You
It's all
should-
dark and
you
weird
need,
looking.
You need to subscribe.
Click the button.
Come out of the dark. It's
What are you
okay.
doing?
Come on, join us. Come back to this camera.
Love you. Hey, you're here. That's nice.
That's cool.
The second game we're going to talk about is Clue. I loved Clue when we grew up. It's just such a
Absolutely.
cool concept. There's been a murder,
It was
and you got to
always
find out.
freaking Mr. Green, man.
It really was. Down in the
was shady.
comments, Who was it for you? It was always Mr. Green.
Always
for us.
Mr. Green was the killer. Always
Always.
Mr. Green.
Yeah, and Mr. Green sucked in
This
our
is a
games.
game where Clue, of course, you're going around to different rooms and stuff and trying to find pieces of evidence. We all have like a piece of the puzzle. I know I have certain cards, whether it be the weapon, the room, or a person. So I know that those are not what is in the little envelope that they would give you that contains the answer and stuff. And you're trying to figure out and kind of deduce one possible solution. There's one killer, one weapon, one room.
Yeah.
And you're kind of moving around to do that. So that is just a cool concept and stuff. And there's other games that have done riffs on that kind of classic motif and do it in like kind of really weird, interesting ways.
Really interesting ways. One of our favorites is a game called Mysterium. Mysterium is a game, it's a cooperative game now where everyone's on the same side because there is one player playing as the ghost. The ghost has been moited.
The person has been murdered.
The person has been murdered, and they were murdered by a person with a thing in a place. And they are trying to get everyone else to figure out who killed them, with what, and where, but they are a ghost, so they can't really talk, and they can only communicate through these dream cards.
Yeah, you have to talk while they're sleeping.
They're these big, beautiful cards with beautiful art that have all this like really weird, trippy art
Very
on it.
abstract and strange, like a dream would be.
And there's a kind of a big tableau of like all the potential killers, all the potential weapons, and all the potential locations, and you're giving out these green cards. So if I'm giving out a bunch of cards that say have a bunch of blue in them, and behind this person, there's like a blue background, people might be like, oh, maybe the person with all the blue on them, you know, the kind of the Miss Peacock, was that her name? Miss Peacock. Maybe it's like kind of Miss Peacock kind of person. Maybe it's them. But so you're passing out these dream cards, trying to get the people to point to certain things to try to get them. But you can't say anything.
Yeah.
It's really, really interesting. But it's also nice because you get to work on it together.
Yeah, I like the idea that like everyone has the same goal.
Yes.
The ghost is obviously doing the heavy lifting by playing those
Yes.
communication cards, but then the rest of the players all get to talk amongst the table about what they think this is. You know, it's like, oh, you could look at the blue background. It's like, but there's also food on these cards, and this person's a chef, so maybe it's the chef.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. There's a lot
Really cool.
of fun discussion that gets to happen, and it's kind of moody and atmospheric, and the ghost is behind this like big
Screen. Kind of like a D&D screen. Kind of.
Yeah, because they're doing stuff behind the screen there. It just creates a cool mood and atmosphere.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. Another game that's kind of in a similar line, if you're looking for a person, place, and thing, or in this case, it's person, thing, and time.
Yes.
And this is the Key series, and there's a whole series of these games called The Key, and this is actually kind of a race deduction game where you're in some kind of scenario. There's one at like Lucky Llama Land. It's like something bad happened at
a theme park.
At a theme park. There's one at like a chateau kind of thing. And basically you are flipping over these cards kind of in a speedway where everyone's doing stuff at the same time. You're trying to do it before everyone else.
Yep.
And you're flipping over these things that are going to be giving you information. And that information is going to allow you to deduce certain things. Because again, there's going to be 3 potential culprits, 3 things that have gotten stolen, and then 3 different times they got stolen out. And you have to figure all that out through these information cards. You're basically trying to do it as fast as possible.
Yeah, and the cards will give you a bunch of different things. Like it might simply be that
this was stolen before this.
Before that. So it's like, okay, well, based on that information, I know that this one item can't possibly be the first one because something else was stolen before it, so I can cross that off.
Yeah.
You're doing all this kind of cross-referencing, and things will sometimes, talk about a character and the time and where they were at that time, so that might give you some more information. There's also like these cool extra like folders, a little dossier you get that might have something where it's like, oh, someone left a partial footprint, as you try to match that up. There's a lot of like fun
really
ways
cool
that you get information, and it does it gives you that good feeling of like at one point you can start to go like do and connect a bunch of dots at once, because you're like, okay, based on this information, without even drawing another card, I can weave my way over to here and get, maybe I know the person now must be the old granny and stuff.
Yeah.
And then you have to figure out the other bits, and you're kind of just, again, drawing cards as quick as you can. You can also play this game cooperatively, where you draw a card one at a time, and cards will have values between 1 and 4, and if it's a 4, it's going to give you more information, but it will essentially cost you more time, and you're trying to get to the answer with as few cards drawn as possible. And you can play it on your own as well in that kind of same puzzle mode.
And the co-op way is a great way to play it. Maybe if you're playing with kids who you'll be able to figure it out faster than them because kids are dumb.
Wow.
Wow. But it's also maybe not competitive, don't want to race. You can play it with them that way. It's really, really fun. I think the Key is super cool.
Really clever.
It's got a really cool reveal when you finally figure out how the way you figure out how it who it is, when it happened is really, really cool.
Yeah.
So those are some quick ones for Clue. Let's get into Jenga, Mikey.
Ooh, Jenga's a classic.
Just pulling blocks,
Classic
put 'em on
dexterity
top.
game. Build up a tower, hope it doesn't fall down.
You go to a brewery. There's a giant version of Jenga now.
There are.
Yeah,
There's a lot of like
2x4s.
lawn game versions of Jenga with just 2x4s. That's a
great.
genius idea.
Yeah.
And so there are many board games that borrow on this classic premise of build a thing that's tall, hope it doesn't fall down.
Yeah.
A classic premise. So a couple that we have here for you, there's a game called Rhino Hero, and then there's also Rhino Hero Super Battle, which is just a little bit more supercharged version of the same thing. This is a game simply where you are building a house of cards.
Yeah.
You are putting down these cards that have, you can put bends in them and stuff, and you are building out floors of a building. So you have a couple of like foundational structure pieces essentially, and then a card that goes flat down on it that makes your next floor, and you are building this tower of cards with the simple hope that you don't blow it, sometimes literally blow it over and cause the tower to collapse.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a super fun, like, classic thing that we try to do as kids and stuff, and this gives you just a little bit more structure to play so you can build these really cool, fun towers. Rhino Hero Super Battle gives you superheroes that you're playing as, which causes the ability to have to, like, move a figure up and then sometimes down floors, and adds a couple other things you have to hang on pieces, just more things that could cause potential havoc and chaos.
Which is just fun.
Yeah, it's just super fun. It's just fun to build something. But I like that in Jenga, you start off with something built and you're kind of trying to weaken the structure and add to it. And here it's like you're going from the ground up and trying to build as kind of big and bad as you can.
Yeah, totally.
And not be the person that, causes the inevitable collapse.
Yeah, which is always going to be me. I've literally blown it over once because I was like,
you're taking a steady breath.
And it was great.
And then all went down.
Rhino Hero is really, really great. Another good option is a game called Junk Art.
Yes.
Junk Art is this game where you have all these different like wooden or plastic shaped pieces, and you are essentially have a bunch of little mini games.
Yeah,
that's really what it is.
Yeah, depending on what mini games you choose, it'll give you basically the rules of what you're trying to do, how you must play, all using those same pieces.
Yeah, so everyone has the same pieces, and so sometimes it's like who can build the highest structure. So you're only building a little structure, but you're trying to
go as high up as you can.
Sometimes it'll be like you have to like give the person to your right a piece, and they have to place that one.
Yep.
So then someone's giving you a piece, so you're constantly trying to give them the worst possible things.
Sometimes it might be like a timed thing. You're trying to get all your pieces onto the structure
as quick as possible.
As quick as possible.
There's all these little mini games that are just really, really fun, and it's just that kind of, again, you're just sitting there stacking a little tabletop, and you're just trying to make it work with whatever silly little rule is there for that.
The pieces are super weird. They're kind of like based on like those wooden blocks, or maybe like a little bridge piece or a triangle, things that aren't just standard sizes and shapes, and you're trying to make them like work together.
Yeah, it's cool. It's really, really fun, and just having those little mini games means it's always a little bit different, which is very, very cool. Absolutely. So those are some quick suggestions for Jenga. What's the next one, Mikey?
Next one we have is the classic Connect 4.
Yes.
This game, man,
it's great.
It's still great.
It's legit just Tic Tac Toe, right? More or less.
Kind of super Tic Tac Toe. Yeah, where you're ultimately trying to get 4 of your color pieces, your little checker pieces, in a row, but you are kind of stacking them up so you can go, vertical, horizontal, diagonal.
Yeah.
And there's, again, as always, games that have kind of borrowed this idea. So one is a game called My Shelfie. A shelfie is a way to say your shelf of games. And you take a picture in front of it. And so this is a game that's centered around you organizing your shelves with like trophies and your cats and plants and board games and things like that. But it has that same structure as Connect 4, where you are literally dropping pieces in from the top and they drop down into their various columns.
It's super cool.
And you're trying to create different shapes of groups of like all these trophies together, or get all of your cats into an X and things like that. And there's also certain spots on your shelf, you have like a little goal card where you want to have a specific tile type in specific locations. So there's a bunch of kind of things to work on, but it keeps that same fun of dropping something into a tower, having it slot in, and then trying to build this kind of vertical puzzle. It's really, really fun. Again, Connect 4 is about trying to work on the same board to outmaneuver your opponents. In this one, you each have your own board, and you're trying to kind of build the best possible, most well-organized shelf of all time.
Yeah, it's really
which is really cool. Yeah.
It's really cool. Now, if you do want that kind of head-to-head Connect 4-ness, check out a game called Quarto. Quarto is this really pretty abstract strategy game with wooden pieces where you are trying to create 4 in a row. the thing about this, and this is why it's Connect 4 on steroids, is because there's 4 possible win conditions. These wooden pieces will have a couple different things. They will be certain heights.
Yep.
They will be certain colors of wood. They will be...
they'll be either like square or round.
Yeah, square or round.
Or hollow or solid.
Exactly. And so what you'll do on your turn is you will, or rather on your turn, your opponent will give you a piece that you will then have to place on the board.
Right.
And you win if you make a Connect 4 of any of those 4 things. All 4 the same height, all 4 the same color, all 4 hollow or solid, or all 4 square or round. But the thing is you have to give your opponent a piece and then they place it and then see if they win.
Right.
So you have to make sure you're not going to give them a piece to win, but you're thinking like 7D chess because you're like, oh, this one's fine. And they go, boom, I win. You're like, oh, I didn't even see that there's 4 round things right there.
Yes.
And so it's just that like super strategic Connect 4 on steroids. It's really fun.
Yeah, but super quick still.
Yes.
It is so fun because
Nice wooden pieces.
Connect 4 is about setting traps for people.
Yes.
And this one, you can really set a lot of tricky traps.
Yeah.
And that makes it really, really delicious. This is a line of games that all start with a Q. There's like Corridor and Koale and stuff. They're all really great.
Yeah.
But Corridor is very Connect 4.
Yeah.
But again, Connect 4 kind of times 4. It's Connect 16, really.
Yeah.
It's a Connect 4 squared.
Pretty much.
To the 4th power? Doesn't matter.
Something like that. No,
Point is,
square.
it's great and you should play it. And those are kind of games that evoke the feelings of Connect 4 for us. But next up we got, dude,
One of our favorites.
Guess Who?
We played a lot of Guess Who.
Played a lot of Guess Who back in the day.
A lot of Guess Who. Guess Who is a game where, again, where you're trying to guess. You're like, does your person have a mustache? Do they have blonde hair? Do they have glasses? You know, and it's very, very simple. Play a little bit. It's a great kids game. But there are a couple different games that kind of do something similar. And one of the main ones that's really like kind of more gamers Guess Who, we can still play with kids, is Dinosaur Tea Party.
Yes.
Dinosaur Tea Party is really Guess Who. You have a big grid of all these very fancy dinosaurs who are out to tea and eating crumpets and such. Yes. And every person will have a dinosaur that they are. Like, you're Reginald, this Tyrannosaurus over here or whatever. And you essentially are going to be asking people different traits about their dinosaur. And there's a certain amount of traits that you can ask.
Yes.
So, like, are their teeth showing? Do they have a hat on? Are they drinking or
are
are
they
they
eating?
pet
With them today?
Do they have a pet? Are they in a green room? Are they in a blue room? You can basically ask specific questions, and the person then has to say yes or no. And then you're just deducing Guess Who style. We're like, okay, well, they're not in a blue room, so all of these dinosaurs that are in blue rooms are now gone.
Yeah.
Now, that is, unless they're lying.
Indeed. So this game introduces, you can play or not with it, the
You don't have to
idea
play
of
this way.
quirks. So quirks will be put onto 3 random dinosaurs in the tableau to start the game. And if the dinosaur you're holding is matching one of the dinosaurs that has a quirk, you must follow the rules of that quirk.
Yep.
One of them is that you are always going to say no to whatever is asked, whether or not it happens to be true. You will always say, nope, I don't have a hat on. You may or may not. One is you'll always switch from yes to no, back and forth. And another one is that you will always lie. Yep. So if they ask if you have teeth showing and you do, you'll say no. And if you have a hat on and they ask if you do, you'll say no.
Yep.
You'll always lie and give the opposite option. So what's great about that is we know these quirks are in the game. It could very well be that none of us happen to have a dinosaur with a quirk, but if someone says no 3 times, you start getting really freaked out about it.
Are you that dinosaur? You know?
So that is what is so brilliant, is
Super
there's
fun.
an extra level of paranoia of just like, are they lying to me? Maybe, maybe not. And that is the juiciest bit of all. But it follows that same idea of asking about traits. It gives you a little bit more guidance.
Yeah.
A really good reference cards that show you at the bottom which traits you have. So it makes it very easy to answer. There's no guesswork. You can look at your cards. You're not staring at one card in the middle of the table. There's also no player elimination.
No, yeah.
If you get found out, you just grab a new dinosaur card. The player who found you out gets a victory point. So it's nice and easy.
They get a
you can
sugar
play
cube.
more than 2 players. It really is all Guess Who in all the ways, except for way better and also with dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Way better.
Way better.
Amazing art.
Way better. Another game that's kind of in a similar-ish ballpark, but not really same kind of game, is a game called Werewolf, or really any social deduction game. This is another game where you're trying to figure out who somebody is.
Who's the baddie?
Who's the baddie? You're not asking them traits like you are in Guess Who, a Dinosaur Tea Party, but like if you ever play like Mafia with a deck of cards, it's the same kind of game that Werewolf is, where one player is a werewolf, and people are trying to figure out who that person
There's
is.
the townsfolk and mayors, and there's kind of like a day and night phase, and there's, you're getting led through the game essentially.
And there are a whole bunch of these kinds of games that are all really different and really, really fun. So if you want that kind of deduction, but not necessarily asking about people's like traits, like in Guess Who, check out really any social deduction game. There's a whole bunch where they're all really, really good.
Type in social deduction game, board games, card games, or whatever.
You'll find a billion.
There's so many great ones. So many.
So one thing we like to do as kids is do choose your own adventure books.
Absolutely.
I always really enjoyed, just you're like, oh, I'm going to go this way. Oh, that was really bad. Okay, we got to start again. I just think it's a really cool concept. And there's actually a lot of games that are choose your own adventure, like including the same company that made those classic choose your own adventure books.
Made them into a couple of games now.
They make them into games, and they're actually really fun, and they are choose your own adventure. So you could actually just choose those games. But what are some other games that are not necessarily just the exact same branded thing?
Right. So there's a lot of them that will basically take you through a story or give you options of branching storylines and stuff. Several of, again, many of them.
At this point, it's a very popular genre.
Yes, one that we really enjoy because it has a beautiful world and wonderful art that's set in. It's a game called Above and Below. This is ultimately what they call kind of like a resource gathering, worker placement game where you're going to be gathering up resources on some actions, and that's going to be all in the above ground portion of the game. But there's also all these caves that are beneath the crust of the earth and stuff. And so you can delve down in there once you have kind of resources and gear built up and stuff, and you're going to ultimately go into a bit of a story.
Yes.
So a nice little simple story. You're going to be able to read off and hear about these fun, cool characters. And then you get some choices to make about kind of how you approach that quest that you're on. Do you take the more peaceful approach, or do you go in guns a-blazing? And that's going to give you options and different outcomes and things like that. So it's kind of nice because the game isn't...
it's not a long campaign.
Exactly. Yes. It's just the brief little story bits that you get, and then you go back up to the surface and kind of try again.
And there's even games in this world Above and Below. There's a whole series of games in that same universe that this game is set in that are much more like campaign. You're playing through an ongoing story. But Above and Below is just kind of like piecemeal. You do a little bit of story. You go back to kind of just a normal board game. You do a little bit of story. It's really, really cool in that way.
Totally.
And it's just really nice. And the world is also really cool.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful world. So Above and Below is one that we highly recommend. It's a really just fun, classic game. There's also games that put you together to help solve a crime called Chronicles of Crime.
Chronicles of Crime, there's also a number of these kinds of games that a lot of them are app integrated, which is a cool way to use technology, because in Chronicles of Crime and a lot of these other games, you will be trying to solve a crime and you'll have to be going to different locations. And in those, it's a lot more like a video game where you'll be going to a location.
Kind of like those point and click mystery games.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, there's evidence here. And a lot of times you will actually take cards, like in the Destiny games and stuff, and you'll take cards and you will they'll have QR codes on them, and you'll literally scan them, and then on your phone or your iPad or whatever you're using will then have the piece of evidence or have the piece of
you learn new information,
and you go from point to point to point trying to figure out what happened or try to move along the story. It's really, really cool, and it's a great way to kind of have a good like 50-50 mix between like video game, but a video game that you can play all together while sitting at the same table. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, and you kind of only have your screen out half the time, and the rest is kind of putting the screens down, which I think with board game stuff is something we're trying to accomplish, is not be on our screens as much. So Chronicles of Crime and Destinies, as you mentioned, both from a company called Lucky Duck Games, who are our channel sponsors. Not why they're on the list, but they are a channel sponsor. Give you these cool choices to make and stuff using some of that technology and the scanning of QR codes and stuff like that.
It's really, really cool way
to do
slick.
It. Works out
and again, it kind of has that choose your own adventure deduction thing that's really, really fun and cool. So the next kind of game we're talking about is Risk. Now, Risk is interesting because Risk is kind of like a popular, kind of more modern board game where this is what's called an area control game where you are trying to take over
a war game, right?
different areas, right? It's a war game and you're rolling dice and trying to get
building
your
up your
in there.
armies.
So Risk is just fine, and the concept of area control game is a huge genre within board games. And there's a lot of other games that do what Risk does, but does it better or just more interestingly. At the very least, there's a game called Risk Legacy, where you can play through multiple games of Risk with the same group, and things change. Like if you drop a nuke on a city, that area is gonna be gone or whatever. It's like
so there are permanent changes that happen from one game to the next. Things that happened before affect what happened now.
So at the very least, play Risk Legacy because it'll be changing and cool. But one of our favorite area control games that's also a bit smaller, really smaller, and this is Small World.
Yes, this is a really kind of boiled down, simple area control game where you are in a fantastical world, and you're going to be playing through as a few different like magical races, the elves and
dwarves,
wizards
the
and things like that. And you're going to get random traits upon them, so they might be like flying giants, which is terrifying to think about.
Really scary.
Or swamp wizards. And based on that combination of race and trait that you get, you're going to get your kind of little tiles to represent, you know, your race of wizards, and you're going to go out onto the board and try to control as many areas as you can, because at the end of your turn, for every area control, you get some points.
Yep.
And you're trying to use that kind of the boons that you get from your traits to maximize what you can get out of that race. But ultimately in the game, you kind of will have spread out as far as you can, and you might want to put that race into decline, choose a new race. Now you have elves, you know, who are,
I don't know, Dragon Master Elves.
there you go. And then that's going to give you new traits and stuff like that, and you can put them out on the board. So it's all about kind of choosing when have I taken like this group of people, this army kind of as far as it can go, and when do I refresh and try something new?
But the thing what's nice about this game, and a lot of modern board games kind of take out luck and risk. It's like you're rolling dice. You're rolling dice, right? Whereas in Small World, there's no luck involved. Where it's like, if you want to take over an area that has nothing in it, it's going to take 2 people. If there's one of Mike's troops in there, it's going to take 3 people. 2 for the area, 1 for one of Mike's chips. If Mike has 2 chips in there, it's 4, and so on and so forth.
It's kind of very straightforward.
It's so simple. It's like, oh, there's this, and this there. I need this many chips to take it over. Boom, that's it. And so it's just very, very simple, very easy. Really fun. We really, really like it. Now, if you want kind of area control, but with a really different kind of mechanic, let's talk a little bit of Wonderland's War.
So Wonderland's War is a game set in the world of Alice in Wonderland.
True.
And it's at a time where everyone's going a little bit mad right now.
As you do in that area.
The madness is spreading in Wonderland, and people are now going to war against each other to kind of dominate the different areas like the Red Keep and stuff like that, the Toogley Woods and such in Wonderland. So this is a game where you are going to be playing as like the Mad Hatter or Alice or the Cheshire Cat. You'll have a character, and you are going to be gathering supporters into these different areas of the board. There's kind of like 5 areas that you can fight over, and then once you're going to be doing this by collecting cards, you're going to be getting these cool chips that you can put into your bag. And that's in the Tea Party phase. And then once you've kind of done that, you've gathered your supporters, you've got your Wonderlandians to come help you out, you got Tweedledee and Tweedledum on your side.
That's right.
You are going to go then and fight for all the areas where you have either your leader, that being, again, Alice or whoever your character is, and any supporters, and you are going to then start pulling chips out of the bag to add like strength to that area. And if you are the person with the most strength, without busting, which you can bust out of the game and have the madness kind of take over you, you win that area and get points over 3 different rounds. You're kind of just trying to have the most points, I guess, to be the strongest leader in Wonderland left.
Yeah, so if you kind of like the luck factor and risk, you want to keep pushing your luck, this is a really fun, more strategic way, because you get to choose what goes into your bag, what chips go in there, what troops you put where, and then you're kind of going to the luck, and it's just really silly and fun, and it's got a great production, a great look. It's a really, again, it's a bit different than something like Risk, but it's kind of got in the same ballpark.
But it's big and splashy. It takes up a ton of table. Yeah, it's really fun.
Really fun. Sorry about that jump cut.
You know what I'm not sorry about? Being so mean in board games.
Yeah, sorry. We had a community game of Sorry that lived at our house, but would kind of go around our neighborhood.
It was for all the kids in the neighborhood, but it lived at our house. Yeah, I'm just saying that's kind of cool. It lived at our house, but it was for all the kids in the neighborhood. Sorry is a game where you are playing out cards to move your little pawns around. You're basically trying to go around the board and get your pawns back into your little home base.
Yes.
But you can, like, if you land on the same spot, you knock someone back, and they, and then you always go, sorry about that. Yeah. And then they have to kind of start over and stuff. And so it's a game where you can choose to be mean.
Indeed.
Depending on how you play those cards and stuff.
Indeed. Now,
people like that in games.
People do like that in games. If you want a game that's
There's a bunch of sociopaths out there who don't mind being mean to people.
If you like really being a mean, check out a game called Munchkin. This is another game that you might have heard of already. And Munchkin gets kind of a bad rap in like the board game hobby because it's just like kind of mean, just straight take that.
Yeah, we're all
but Munchkin's a good little game. It's really fun. This is a game where you're trying to get to 10 points, I believe. Yep. And you're playing cards And all these cards are trying to get you ahead and then also constantly ripping people down. And the closer you get to 10, the more people are going to gang up on you and try and pull you back. And so if you like that aspect of Sorry, get Munchkin because there's more strategy, because there's more cards, there's more interesting stuff to do. It's not just like, sorry, boom, bump. And you can actually plan what you're doing. And then again, if you get ahead, people are going to be coming after you. So you got to be prepared to
Gang up on
really
the leader
fight.
for sure.
It's definitely fun. Again, it kind of gets a bad rap in the hobby. It shouldn't. Munchkin's great.
Yeah, and there's also a ton of themed versions, a million of them. So you can find the theme that's like perfect for you, that you're most interested in. I promise you there's a Munchkin version of it.
Indeed.
It's
so
out there.
Check out Munchkin if you want that meanness. But if you want kind of like where you're messing with each other, but there's a little bit more production value, let's talk some Fireball Island.
So Fireball Island, the Curse of Volcar, and there's also a Target version as well. That is very much the same game.
Fireballs.
It comes down to, it's a classic. It's by Restoration Games, who brings back games from the past. You might have heard about this game from like the 80s.
Yeah.
There's now a new version. This is a game where you are running around an island, and there are a bunch of marbles on the island representing fireballs, and you are flicking those marbles, hoping to knock over your opponents, which is them getting a fireball to the face, which then allows you to steal some stuff from them and things like that. So it is hilarious. It is on this big 3D terrained board, so the marbles are racing down these pathways and things like that. There's also Volcar in the middle who you drop marbles into, and there's marbles that go out various chutes and stuff. So it's just chaos, pure chaos, pure wonderful toy value, and it's mean because you're flicking marbles around, but it's so silly.
Yeah.
And half the time you do it, and the whole board shakes because there's earthquakes. That's just the board shaking.
Yeah.
And you might knock your own person over.
All the time.
Fireball yourself, and you have to get rid of one of your treasures.
Yeah.
You're trying to collect sets of treasure. There are vistas and stuff that you're trying to get around to take pictures. And then once you kind of collect pictures and get some treasures, you're trying to get off the island before you're swallowed by Volcar's rage. So it's so fun because you can be, quote, mean to each other. But you have to make the shot with the marble first of all. And so there's like the fun of like, I'm just going to launch this thing over and knock you out, and then you just completely whiff, or you pull off an amazing shot. And I can't be mad because that was actually awesome that you did that. It's just so silly and fun that it gets rid of a lot of the bad vibes that could come from a game where someone's being targeted or whatever. And just keeps it really silly.
Yeah, it's just so much fun. And again, you mess up yourself just as often as you mess up other people. It's just a great, silly time. Can be kind of mean, but there's definitely some strategy. It's got great production value. Fireball Island is an absolute banger.
10 out of 10.
So those are some suggestions for Sorry, but let's talk about Candyland, a game that I think is objectively not very good.
It's just... Candyland is one that, and if you like it, this is no disrespect if you like it.
Not at all.
Enjoy it. Like the games you like. It's totally fine. What we have found in Candyland is that you pretty much draw a card. It gives you a color. You move to that space. You might go forward. You might go backward, depending on what you land on. There's not a lot of choice that happens. You just are beholden to whatever the cards do. So we like games where you get more choices. So a couple games that we have here that kind of feel Candyland-ish are these. So the first one is Trails. Trails is a game where you are going on a lovely hike, and you're going up and down, back and forth with your little hiker, and as you land on spaces, you are picking up resources. You're getting memories of your hike, essentially. That'll be in the form of like acorns and leaves and things you find. And when you get to the end of the trail, you can turn in those things to basically complete like merit badges and stuff, and to get these like postcards and stuff. So again, it's all about memories of your hike. So the idea of like Candyland, you're going through a pathway, and here you're going up and down these paths, but where you stop and when and stuff and what resources you collect are up to you. So you get these choices to make, and what resources am I trying to hang on to? What cards am I going to try to buy? That gives you a lot of fun choices within that. There's also another one that you thought of that I thought was so brilliant because it just feels very nostalgic in its way.
Well, it's preying on nostalgia. Not preying, that's the wrong word, but it's working on nostalgia. This is the Adventure Book series. So there is a series by Ravensburg called the Adventure Book series. There's one for Wizard of Oz, Lord of the Rings, which we haven't played yet. I really need to play.
Princess Bride.
And I'm sure they're going to do more, but this essentially is kind of almost like a campaign game. We're going to be going through the story of this story. So Wizard of Oz, you're starting off in Kansas. Everything is in black and white. And then you go to, I almost said Wonderland, then you go to Oz, and then everything's in color. And then each game of this is going to be on a book that's open.
It's like a new chapter of the story.
It's a new chapter of the story, and you have to do certain stuff that makes sense in that chapter. So, you know, if you're in Munchkin Land, you have to like arrange all the Munchkins in certain ways.
They're doing their dance and
they're
stuff.
They're doing their dance and stuff. But there are different paths around the board. So again, you're moving along paths, and wherever you're going is going to dictate kind of what you're doing. And again, depending on what part of the chapter you're in, that will dictate what you need to be doing. And so it's cool because every single game, it's different. And you get to play through stories that you love. We grew up on Lord of the Rings and Princess Bride. And so it's like these kinds of games are so cool. Yeah. But they do have that where you're going along paths. We haven't finished the Wizard of Oz one, but I'm sure at one point you're going along the Yellow Brick Road.
Yep.
100%. And so, you know, but you're going to have to go find the Tin Man. You're going to have to go, you know, all this different kind of stuff. It's super cool.
It gives you all of those things that you remember from these movies so fondly. Yeah. And so it puts you right back into that. So there's all that familiarity. And it's fun to play through the story and see how it goes for you. You know, does it work out? Do you make it to the next chapter? Do you get knocked out by the Wicked Witch this time? Right? Things like that. So again, as of this recording, and hopefully they make more, there's Lord of the Rings. We're super excited.
Yeah.
The Wizard of Oz and the Princess Bride.
Yeah.
So you get to make references to the movies and stuff while you play, and it's just really fun. The art is beautiful. They're just really beautifully rendered. You can tell like there's a care for the source material here. All these are based on books, but the games are based on the movies that are based on the books. You get it. But they really take care with it, and they're just really beautifully produced. I have been impressed with each and every one of them.
Yeah, they're super cool. So those are some suggestions for Candyland. The last one we're going to talk about today is, of course, the game of life.
You know it.
Because we're all living this life, and we got to do it. Life, we played a ton of. It's got a cool spinner. You know. But that's, and you're making a life. You're getting like a family and kids. You're getting a job. You're living in a shack. You know how it goes.
You get that split level house that's been through an earthquake or whatever.
It's great.
So you are going through a life, and you do have a couple points of choices. Like, do I want to go to college, or do I want to jump right into the workforce? Do I want to get married, or to who, and all these things as you go? But there's a lot of the game where it's sort of like spin the spinner, go to the space that it has to, and there are branching pathways. There's choices, I guess, but it's sort of like, do I want to land on this thing where I have to pay $200 or land on a payday and get $500? And you kind of go through a life, so it's fairly like what we call on rails. You sort of like just as it goes, it happens. But a game that definitely takes the premise of life and gives you all these choices, and we prefer to make the craziest life possible, is a game called A Pursuit of Happiness. So the whole goal in this game is to create lasting memories, happy moments and stuff, because happiness is your victory points. And you want to be the happiest player at the end of the game. So you're going to be going through a life where you're going to be given these player pieces that represent time. And you are going to use them to do different activities, work certain jobs, work on a relationship. And it is up to you to decide, how do I want to spend the time that is given to me? What do I want to do with my time? Do I want to work a super high-paying job? That's great. Guess what? It takes a lot of time. You have to dedicate a lot of time and a lot of your resources to that job, but you get a lot of money. Maybe I can buy some items and work on a hobby.
Buy a boat.
With that money. But, again, do I want to spend all my time on my job, or would I rather work on a relationship? It's completely up to you what you do.
Or do you want to work at an Arby's and join a motorcycle gang?
That's possible.
You can do that.
That's very possible.
Because one thing that's fun about this game is, like,
you want to date multiple people? Go for it. It will stress you out.
Yeah, you can. It can stress you out, but you can have 7 spouses. You can have no job, but you can also get these hobbies. You can get certain items, and then the cool thing is like as you get like I'm gonna start a record collection, right? And every single one of these things, you can put more time in over the different rounds.
Multiple levels to it, essentially.
You're like, oh, you start off getting a couple records, and then you have like a shelf of records, and then you have like a wall of records, and then you own a record store. And every single time, you can put more time onto this thing, put more resources in, and then you get these other resources. It's so cool because, again, you can just live these weird lives. So you're like, I don't have a job, but I got jet skis and a motorcycle gang, and I'm great.
Yeah, I quit my job every other year, and you're going to go starting off as kind of a young adult into adulthood and then old age, and you're going to go through the end of your life. Your character will eventually die from stress.
You're going to die of a heart attack.
And then you kind of take stock at the end and see, like, how'd you do? How'd you do? What kind of life did you live?
And you're trying to get long-term happiness. That's the point. Which is the best points in any game ever.
Exactly. I genuinely love that as a point structure, is long-term happiness. That's the only thing we get to take with us. I love, and we always do, look back on all the cards you played throughout the game and stuff, and just like, what kind of journey did you go on? Because it is all over the place.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's super duper fun. But again, everything you do is your choice. You can live, you know, a very, whatever that means to you, standard life.
Yeah.
You could do something that you would never do in your real life, and
Yeah.
that's why it's a fun exercise and stuff. There's really a million directions to go, but it's all up to you. You get to make all those choices. Versus like a game of life where it's sort of the spinner tells you where to go and things happen, which is maybe more accurate to real life.
Yeah.
Things just happen, but we prefer the Pursuit of Happiness.
Yeah, Pursuit of Happiness is really, really good. So those are some suggestions for 10 games from your, or at least our childhood, but probably yours as well.
Yeah, I would think so.
That there's some new games out there do something kind of similar, but do it better or just different, and it's just more interesting. So again, if you haven't tried out board games in a while, give these ones a shot because they're going to be kind of familiar, but probably more robust and a little bit more going on. And hopefully you can get into this hobby that we love so much. Also, look down in the comments because people, if you are in the hobby already, put other suggestions down in the comments for games that can replace childhood favorites.
Yeah.
Because there's so many. So it hopefully should be a good treasure trove down there of different games.
Do check that out in the comments below, and thank you for contributing your own comment and stuff. If you like this video, let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Again, don't make us put you back on the other camera. Just subscribe so you can stay on the good camera here. And thanks so much for giving us some of your time. We appreciate it. I'm Mike.
I'm Nick.
We're the Brothers Murph. We'll catch you all in the next Top 10.
Bye, everybody.